Not here, not now. Not after everything Dexter Morgan has gone through since his resurrection. But just when the shadows felt too heavy and the story seemed to spiral into its darkest hour, a familiar face steps back into the light. Vince Masuka, the fan favorite, the comic relief, the man who once made Dexter's bloody world strangely human, is suddenly here again. And with his return, Episode 9, Touched by an Angel, delivers a moment that shakes both Dexter and the audience to their core. This isn't just nostalgia. This is the past colliding with the present. And it changes everything. The story of Dexter Resurrection has never been about comfort. Since the show's revival, the writers have leaned heavily into themes of guilt, consequence, and legacy. Episode 9 doesn't just continue that, it magnifies it. To understand why Masuka's return feels so shocking, we need to first remember the state of things leading up to this chapter. Dexter has been pulled deeper and deeper into his old habits. His dark passenger, the voice that drives him toward killing, has been fighting harder than ever to regain control. Even though Dexter has tried to build a life again somewhere, between fatherhood and survival, the temptation of blood never really leaves. It whispers, it scratches at him. And every time he thinks he's buried it, the darkness comes roaring back. By the time we reach Episode 9, Dexter is already fragile, already stretched thin. Then there's Harrison, his son, the boy who carries both Dexter's blood and his legacy. Harrison has been a mirror to Dexter this whole season, reflecting not only his father's love but also his flaws. Their bond has been shaky, riddled with secrets, anger, and mistrust. The writers have framed their relationship as both heartwarming and terrifying because we're always left asking, will Harrison inherit Dexter's darkness, or can he escape it? By Episode 9, this question hangs heavier than ever, and it's not just Dexter and Harrison. The world around them feels more dangerous, more claustrophobic. The people who once trusted Dexter now suspect him, and the enemies who lurk in the shadows are closing in. Resurrection has slowly built a sense of paranoia, reminding us that every choice Dexter makes has a consequence. And every ghost from his past might someday return. This is the stage. A story on the edge of implosion. A father battling his inner monster. A son searching for identity in the middle of chaos. And a city haunted by the memories of Miami Metro, standing as both a graveyard of Dexter's sins and a reminder of the lives he once touched. And then, when it feels like the tension couldn't stretch any further, Masuka walks back into the frame. But what makes this moment so powerful isn't just his sudden appearance. It's the weight of memory. For longtime fans, Vince Masuka isn't just another side character. He's the humor in the horror. The awkward, lovable, sometimes inappropriate forensic scientist who balanced Dexter's cold, methodical detachment with human warmth. He was comic relief, yes, but also a reminder that life still had laughter, even in the middle of darkness. So when Masuka shows up in Episode 9, it's not just a cameo, it's a jolt to the system. It's the past reminding Dexter and us that no matter how far you run, pieces of your old world will always find their way back. And the real question becomes, is Masuka's return a blessing or is it a threat? Because in Dexter, nothing ever happens without a cost. Asterisk, it happens quietly, almost too quietly for something this important. The camera doesn't explode with dramatic music at first, instead it lingers. The scene opens in the sterile glow of the Miami Metro Crime Lab, a place we thought was left behind long ago, almost fossilized in Dexter's past. There's a sense of unease in the air. Dexter's voiceover mutters about evidence, patterns, the pull of the dark passenger. Everything feels normal, too normal, and then we hear it. A laugh. Not just any laugh, but laugh. A high-pitched, slightly awkward chuckle that longtime fans know instantly. Before we even see his face, the sound does all the work. The camera turns, and there he is, Vince Masuka. His lab coat crisp, his grin wide, his presence completely unchanged by the years. For a split second, it feels as if time has folded back on itself. The shock comes not because Masuka is here, but because of when he arrives. Episode 9 is deep into a storm of tension. Dexter is unraveling, Harrison is slipping further from his Father's reach and danger presses in from all sides. The return of Masuka in the middle of all this is like a lightning strike. It cuts through the darkness, leaving everyone, characters and audience, stunned. Dexter's reaction is fascinating. He doesn't flinch, doesn't openly reveal the rush of memories Masuka triggers, but his eyes, always so carefully guarded, betray him for a moment. Behind them we see recognition, guilt, and something close to fear. Because Masuka represents the old world, the Miami world, the place where Dexter's mask was always most fragile. And here, in this new chapter of his life, Dexter can't afford old masks to slip back into place, but what makes Masuka's reintroduction so brilliant is how natural it feels. He doesn't burst in with dramatic revelations, he just exists, as if he's always been there, waiting. He cracks a joke, drops a sly comment that toes the line of inappropriateness, and instantly the balance of the scene shifts. The tension Dexter has been carrying is now tinged with humor, nostalgia, and dread all at once. It's the writers reminding us, even in the darkest stories, the past carries its own strange light. For fans, the emotional punch is layered. First, there's joy. Masuka was always a comfort character, someone whose humor could cut through the blood and brutality of Dexter's world. Seeing him again is like bumping into an old friend, awkward, sure, but deeply welcome. Then there's unease, because this is Dexter, and nothing here ever comes without purpose. Masuka isn't just here for fan service. His return means something. His timing is too precise, too sharp to be an accident. The brilliance of this scene lies in how it weaponizes nostalgia. We're happy to see Masuka, but happiness in Dexter is never safe. His presence reminds us of the duality at the heart of the show, the warmth of human connection colliding with the cold reality of Dexter's secret. For every laugh Masuka sparks, there's an undercurrent of danger. Will his sharp forensic skills put him too close to Dexter's trail again? Will his loyalty to the truth put him in harm's way? And here's where the shock factor really lands. For Dexter, Masuka isn't just a memory. He's a risk. Every character who returns from the past threatens to expose the careful balance Dexter tries to maintain. Masuka may laugh, may joke, may act like the same guy we knew years ago, but behind that smile, there's a question mark. Has he changed? Has he grown wiser, sharper, more suspicious? The camera seems to know this. Shots linger on his eyes just a little too long, catching the flicker of intelligence behind the jokes. It reminds us that, beneath his goofball exterior, Masuka is good at what he does. He's one of the best forensic scientists in Miami. If anyone could spot something strange, some inconsistency in Dexter's carefully curated world, it would be him. So the shock of Masuka's return isn't just about nostalgia. It's about the threat he represents. A living, breathing reminder of the old Dexter life colliding with the fragile, dangerous present. In a season that's been building toward questions of truth, legacy, and survival, Masuka's presence feels like a loaded gun placed carefully on the table. It hasn't gone off yet, but the audience knows it could, and that's what makes his reappearance unforgettable. He's not just a ghost from the past. He's a spark in the powder keg. And with just one laugh, one offhand comment, Vince Masuka reminds us why Dexter Resurrection is a story where nothing and no one returns without purpose. Asterisk. The title of Episode 9, Touched by an Angel, isn't just poetic, it's deliberate. On the surface, it feels ironic. Dexter Morgan, the serial killer who lives by the code of Harry, is the last person you'd ever associate with angels. Yet that's what makes the phrase so unsettling. In Dexter's world, angels aren't divine protectors. They're illusions, masks, and sometimes warnings. This episode uses that imagery to pull us deeper into the story's soul, and Masuka's return fits into that symbolism like a puzzle piece we didn't realize was missing. At its core, the phrase touched by an angel suggests salvation, an outside force reaching in to protect or guide someone lost in darkness. For Harrison, this theme feels painfully real. He's been drifting between his father's shadow and his own search for meaning, desperate for guidance. His interactions in Episode 9 reflect a boy on the edge, teetering between redemption and damnation. To him, an angel might be the hope that he's not destined to become like his father. But the cruel twist of the Dexter universe is that angels rarely arrive in the way we expect. Sometimes they're guardians. Other times they're harbingers. Masuka, oddly enough, embodies this dual role. On one hand, he's the comedic angel, the light in the darkness. His jokes, his eccentric energy, his quirky humanity, these remind us of a softer world, one where not every scene is drenched in blood and guilt. He brings warmth to an episode otherwise suffocating in paranoia. In that way, he's like a touch of grace, a reminder that life outside of death still exists, but peel back that surface, and there's something more dangerous. Angels in Dexter's story are never purely saviors. They're often mirror sources that expose truths characters are trying to bury. Masuka's very presence acts like a spotlight on Dexter's double life. He represents everything Dexter thought he had escaped from: the lab, the colleagues, the jokes that filled the air while corpses lay on the table. And just by standing there, Masuka becomes a kind of angel of judgment, even if he doesn't realize it. His forensic skills, his ability to laugh through darkness, make him a perfect reminder that the truth always has a way of surfacing. The angel theme doesn't stop with Masuka. Throughout episode 9, there are quiet echoes of redemption and grace. The way the camera frames Harrison in moments of vulnerability, often bathed in soft light, suggests that he's searching for something greater than the cycle of violence. The way Dexter's narration contrasts his inner monster with his outward need to protect his son feels almost biblical. He's torn between the roles of executioner and guardian angel, unsure which one will define him. And then there's the dark irony. In Dexter's world, angels often fall. Think back to Deborah, who once represented moral clarity, only to become corrupted by the truth of who her brother really was. Think of Hannah, who carried love but also destruction in equal measure. Episode 9 plays with that pattern. It suggests that anyone who steps into Dexter's orbit, even someone as seemingly harmless as Masuka, risks being dragged into his endless war between light and shadow. Visually, the episode leans into this symbolism. Shots linger on religious imagery, crosses in the background, light filtering like stained glass, subtle wings painted on walls. These aren't coincidences. They're reminders that the show wants us to question what it means to be touched by an angel. Is it salvation? Is it exposure? Or is it just another mask for something more sinister? For Dexter himself, the title cuts the deepest. He has always seen himself as separate from humanity, almost cursed. Harry's code gave him rules, but it never gave him peace. The idea of being touched by an angel feels impossible for him, an unreachable grace. And yet, with Masuka back in the picture, we see a flicker of the old Dexter, the one who could laugh in the lab, the one who almost felt human. It's fleeting, but it's there. The angelic touch here isn't salvation, it's memory. A memory of what was lost and what can never truly return, and maybe that's the most haunting symbolism of all. In Dexter Resurrection, angels don't save, they remind. They remind characters of the choices that brought them here, of the innocence they can't reclaim, of the truths they can't escape. Masuka, Harrison, even Dexter himself, they're all touched by angels in this episode. But whether those angels are lifting them up or pushing them closer to the fall, that's the question the show refuses to answer. By weaving this symbolism into the return of Masuka, Episode 9 does something genius. It doesn't just give us nostalgia, it reframes it. Masuka isn't back just to make us smile, he's back to make us think, to remind us that every laugh carries a shadow, and that in Dexter's universe, even angels leave blood on their wings, asterisk when Masuka steps back into Dexter's orbit. It doesn't just change the atmosphere of a single scene, it shifts the entire rhythm of the story. Up until now, Resurrection has been suffocatingly tense, built on a steady beat of paranoia and dread. But Masuka's reappearance tilts the balance, forcing the characters to interact in ways that are both revealing and dangerous. Let's start with Dexter. His relationship with Masuka was always defined by a strange duality. On the surface, they were colleagues, the quiet, calculating blood spatter analyst and the loud, eccentric forensic scientist. But beneath that, Masuka's energy always threatened Dexter's mask. Masuka's constant jokes, his invasive curiosity, and his ability to notice details others overlooked made him both harmless and quietly dangerous. That dynamic hasn't changed. In episode 9, the moment Masuka cracks a joke, Dexter's reaction isn't laughter, it's stillness. A pause. Because even after all these years, Masuka has a way of slipping past Dexter's defenses, dragging him back into memories of Miami Metro, of evidence bags, of laughter echoing around tables filled with blood-soaked corpses. For Dexter, Masuka isn't just a colleague, he's a reminder of how fragile the mask of normalcy really is, but the most fascinating shift comes when Harrison enters the equation. Harrison doesn't know Masuka like longtime fans do. To him, this is just a stranger, an oddball forensic guy with a questionable sense of humor. But the chemistry between Harrison and Masuka is electric. Masuka treats Harrison with the same warmth he shows everyone, teasing, laughing, trying to make him feel comfortable. And in that moment, we see something powerful. Harrison actually responds. For once, he lets his guard down, just a little. There's almost a spark of joy in him, as if Masuka's humor cuts through the storm of pressure he's been under. This matters because it shows that Harrison doesn't just crave guidance from his father, he craves connection from people who feel real, human, and unburdened by darkness. Masuka gives him that, even if only briefly, this dynamic subtly shifts the plot. Dexter notices Harrison's reaction to Masuka, and it unsettles him. It's not jealousy, it's fear. Fear that Harrison might bond with someone from Dexter's old life, someone who could unknowingly reveal truths that should never come to light. Masuka doesn't know the full truth of Dexter, but he knows enough history, enough patterns, enough small inconsistencies from the old days. If Harrison grows close to him, if conversations slip into dangerous territory, the carefully built wall between Dexter's two worlds could collapse. Beyond Dexter and Harrison, Masuka's presence ripples outward into the narrative web. Other characters, colleagues, detectives, even antagonists treat Masuka as a piece of continuity, a steady thread from the past, and that's where the writing gets clever. In a story about reinvention and resurrection, Masuka represents the opposite, constancy. He hasn't changed much, but that's exactly why his presence is threatening. While everyone else is evolving, lying, or hiding, Masuka's consistent honesty, his blunt, if awkward personality becomes a mirror the other characters can't escape. The plot shifts in subtle ways too. Scenes that might have unfolded with cold calculation suddenly feel unpredictable when Masuka is in the room. A tense discussion about evidence becomes lighter on the surface, but underneath the danger doubles. Because Masuka's humor makes people drop their guard, which means truths can slip out without anyone realizing. That unpredictability is now baked into the story. Every interaction with Masuka carries dual weight. He makes the characters laugh, but he also nudges the narrative closer to exposure, and then comes the foreshadowing. Episode 9 uses Masuka like a chess piece, placing him in moments that seem harmless only to remind us of the stakes. For example, when he casually comments on a piece of evidence, the camera lingers just long enough to make us wonder, did he notice too much? Did his sharp forensic eye catch something Dexter tried to hide? These small, seemingly throwaway interactions build tension not because of what's said, but because of what's left unsaid. In a show like Dexter, silence is just as dangerous as words. Perhaps the most powerful shift, though, is thematic. With Masuka in the mix, the story feels less isolated. Up until now, Dexter and Harrison's world has been closing in on itself, almost claustrophobic in its focus. Masuka's return cracks that world open, reminding us that Dexter's past is vast, filled with people who once mattered. And that's the danger. The more past lives re-enter his present, the more impossible it becomes for Dexter to keep the truth buried. By the end of episode 9, it's clear Masuka isn't just a side character dropped in for nostalgia. He's a catalyst. His interactions reshape the emotional dynamics, and his presence shifts the stakes. Every laugh he brings to the room also brings a question: how long until he sees too much? How long until his humanity collides with Dexter's monstrosity? And that's the genius of it. The writers don't need to make Masuka dark or threatening in the traditional sense. His danger lies in his light, in the fact that he's too human, too observant, too honest for the world Dexter has built. And as, the episode closes, the audience knows the return of Masuka isn't just about what he adds, it's about what he threatens to take away.